Hey everybody, welcome to the BWC Online Bible Study. Today we're looking at Genesis chapter 45, and I just want to talk to you about how God can fix broken things. He can heal broken things, maybe things that you've broken, or someone that you care about has broken, and He is in the job of restoration. He is in the job of healing. He can take the hopeless and turn it into hopeful. And we're going to talk about that today as we look at the story of Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, then lied about, and then a prisoner, and then forgotten. And all of a sudden, the Pharaoh has some bad dreams, and Joseph is the one who gets called on to tell him what they mean, because he's the one who's listening to the Holy Spirit. He's the one that God sent there to tell Pharaoh what was going to happen, and God uses him. And then he sets up this opportunity where his brothers are standing in front of him. They have no idea who he is, but he knows who they are. And he puts them to the test to find out if their hearts have changed. And when he finds out that their hearts really have changed, that they're not the same as they used to be, that they're humble now, that they are not going to, give up their little brother Benjamin so that they can go free, that they're willing to give themselves up to keep Benjamin safe and to bring him back to their father like they promised that they would. And we see at this point that Joseph is ready to reconcile with them. He is ready to tell them who he is. And it starts in Genesis chapter 45, verse 1. It says, Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you." So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. And then he broke down and he wept. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians could hear him. And the word of it quickly carried to the Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned when they realized it was Joseph standing in front of them. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer. And he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve lives. This famine has ravaged the land for 2 years and will last for 5 more, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was that God sent me here, not you, and he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace and the governor of all of Egypt." So we know that God doesn't make people sin. He doesn't make them do things that they're not supposed to do. And so it is that we see that when Joseph's telling his brothers that you didn't do this, God did, that God is the one who took the circumstances and the situations and turned them out for good. He's the one who got Joseph where he needed to be all along, in spite of their jealousy, of their sin, of their mistakes. And he brought Joseph into the palace to change lives, to save people, to do the things that God had called him to do. And so Joseph is just kind of laying this all out in front of his brothers, and he's talking to them and telling them he wants to reconcile, that he's not mad, that he knows that God is the one who brought him to this place. And he says, "Now hurry back and tell my father, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me master over the land of Egypt. So come down to me immediately. You can live in the region of Goshen, where you can be near me with all your children and your grandchildren and your flocks and your herds and everything that you own, and I will take care of you there. For there are still 5 years of this famine ahead. Otherwise, you and your household and all your animals will starve." This Joseph added, "Look, you can see for yourselves. So can my brother Benjamin that I really am Joseph. Go tell my father of my honored position here in Egypt. Describe to him everything that you have seen, and then bring my father here quickly." Weeping with joy, he embraced Benjamin, and Benjamin did the same. And then Joseph kissed each of his brothers, and he wept over them. And after that, they began talking freely. So they were in shock at first because they did not realize what was going on. They thought they were being punished for their sin. That's why all these bad things were happening to them. But really what it was a test. It was a test to see if they had changed, if they were different men than they were when they sold him into slavery. And then they had the opportunity to speak freely, to really soak it in that this really was happening, that God really made this happen. And it says Pharaoh invites Jacob to Egypt. The news soon reached the Pharaoh's palace. Joseph's brothers had arrived. Pharaoh and his officials were delighted to hear this. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, this is what you must do. Load your pack animals and hurry back to the land of Canaan. Get your father and all of your families and return here with me. I will give you the very best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat from the best of the land that the land produces." And the Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers to take wagons from the land of Egypt and to carry your little children and your wives and bring your father here. Do not worry about your personal belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours." So the sons of Jacob did as they were told, and Joseph provided them with wagons as the Pharaoh had commanded, and he gave them supplies for the journey, and he gave them new clothes. But Benjamin he gave 5 changes of clothes and 300 pieces of silver. And he also sent his brother 10 male donkeys and loaded the finest products of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with the finest grain and bread and other supplies that he would need on his journey. So Joseph sent his brothers off, and as they left, he called after them, "Don't quarrel about all this along the way." And then they left Egypt and returned to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. "Joseph is alive," they told him. "He is governor of the land of Egypt." Jacob was stunned at the news. He couldn't believe it. And then when they repeated it to Jacob, everything that Joseph had told them, when they saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, his father's spirits revived. Jacob exclaimed, "It must be true. My son Joseph is alive. I must go see him before I die." So Jacob had really believed that his son Joseph had died. And so it's almost like, Jesus rising from the dead. He had been gone for so long and had really felt no hope in his heart of seeing him again. And then there he is. There is this truth that his son Joseph is alive and that they're going to be reunited. All these years of struggle, all these years of pain, the work that God was doing on the inside of them, each of them. And he had a purpose and a plan in all of it. Sometimes we're going through stuff in life and we just don't understand it. Some of it's our fault. Some of it's other people and decisions that they have made. But God is the one who is in the job, in the business of restoration. He wants to restore. He wants to heal. He wants to take the broken things and make them whole again. He wants us to come into right relationship with him. He loves you and he cares about you. Whether you're the one who's been wronged like Joseph, or you're the one who did the wrong like the brothers, God has a purpose and a plan for your life. He cares about you, and he wants to restore the broken things. And it takes both parties. They had to be willing to humble themselves and to admit their wrong and let God do that work on the inside of them. And Joseph had to be willing to forgive. And so we see these two parts that are making a whole here as they all turn their hearts toward God, and then he brings the restoration. And so that's what I want to leave you with today. Genesis chapter 45. There can be hope for restoration even when it looks hopeless if everyone involved is willing to turn their heart toward God. And sometimes the plan is bigger than us, and it's not always just the one who's been wronged who forgives the others that God has a plan for. He has a plan for all of us, even the ones who have done the wrong, who need the forgiveness, who have who have messed it all up. And when we turn our hearts toward God, He can do a work on the inside of us. He can restore and He can heal. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today, Genesis chapter 45, and I'll catch you back again in Genesis chapter 46.